This conference will now be recorded.
All right, let's pray. Our Father, thank you very much that we can once again have the opportunity of studying together, of sharing together from your word. Father, we ask you to please open our understanding, give us clear thoughts, help us that the things that we study may be a blessing for all of us. I know that you hear our prayer, and I know that you answer. So thank you, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Last time last 2 weeks we were studying from the book of Revelation, and we actually spent a good deal of time looking at the beast in Revelation 17 and 13, and I think we did a pretty exhaustive examination of the first beast, the one with the 7 heads and 10 horns. But we did say that we would look at the second beast this week. Somebody was also asking about the Sister Maria was asking about the 144,000. So I don't know if she's in the room, but if she is, Sister Maria, you're here. All right. So
happy Sabbath.
And to you too, and to you too. So I'm thinking that maybe we should do two things first. First of all, I would want to if there are any questions pertaining to the beast, because I know we spent a good time discussing that last week, then maybe we could start this evening by looking at those questions. And secondly, since Sister Maria asked about the 144,000, then I would like to spend some time also looking at that. And if any time is left, we could look at the second beast. But if not, we will focus on those two things this week. So the first thing I want to ask, and maybe some people might arrive later on who might have questions. If you do, then we'll be happy to look at those questions. But the first thing is, are there any questions arising from our discussion last week? Last week we looked at the question of, last week we were looking at the beast of Revelation 17, and we were looking at how that beast is correlated with the beast of Revelation 13. So, is there any question relating to that before we
Yes, I have a question. In Revelation 13, concerning the first beast. So now I see that as the Roman papal power. Do you agree with that?
I used to. That's what I used to believe. I'm not agreeing with that anymore.
Okay, I thought that's what you said last week. So briefly, what do you think that first power is again then?
Okay. Let me explain why I don't agree, and then it will help me to be able to better zero in on what I think that power is. The real reason is because of Revelation 17. The beast in Revelation 17 is carrying a woman, and I think everybody agrees that the woman represents the Roman papal power, the Roman Catholic institution. That this is at least the woman in the present stage. She's riding the beast, and Revelation 17 tells us that at some point, very near to the end, the 10 horns on the beast will hate the woman, will eat her flesh, make her naked, and burn her with fire. So at this point, we can see that the Roman Catholic institution is taken out of the picture. But the beast remains. And the beast is healthy and alive and well, so that when Jesus is returning in Revelation 19, the beast is there, along with the false prophet, and they are actually taken and thrown into the bottomless pit. But this is after the woman is already taken out of the way. So if the woman is a Roman Catholic institution, the beast cannot be the Roman Catholic institution, because it's the beast through the 10 horns that actually takes the woman out. So the other thing is that we ask the question then, is the beast in chapter 17 the same as the beast in chapter 13? And that's why I'm saying that I cannot find harmony in saying that the one in 13 is the papacy and the one in 17 is not the papacy, because the description of both beasts is almost identical. They both have 7 heads, they both have 10 horns, they both have make war against God's people, they both exist at the end of time, they both have a period when it seems like they are gone and then they come back. So I don't understand the Bible to be saying there are two different powers that have these exact characteristics at the end of time: 7 heads, 10 horns, deadly wound healed, make war against God's people. So the conclusion is that the beast of 17 is the same as the one in 13. There are two differences, and those differences can be explained. One of them is not really a difference, but people try to point it out. They say that the one in 17 is a scarlet beast. The one in 13, we are not given a color. It says it's a beast with a body like a leopard, and we all assume that a leopard is a yellow beast, but we're not told of a color. In chapter 17, it says that that one is a scarlet beast. So that is presented as a difference, where it's not necessarily a difference. It's just that in chapter 13, God does not mention the color. The other difference is that the one in chapter 7, there's no mention of crowns on the horns. It says he has 7 heads and 10 horns. In chapter 17, it says there are 7 heads and 10 horns, and the 10 horns have crowns on them. But that again is a difference that can be explained, because in my understanding, in chapter 13, we are looking at the career of the beast. Like I try to point out, as a panorama, God is giving us one snapshot that covers the whole history of the beast in chapter 13. And the 10 horns did not have crowns for the entire history of the beast. In Revelation 17, it says that the 10 horns, the 10 kings, receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. So the 10 horns only receive that power in the last moment of time, when the beast becomes king number 8. After the 7 heads are gone, the beast becomes king number 8. And that is the last moments of time when he re-emerges from the bottomless pit. And at this time, the 10 horns will receive power. So at this time, because they become kings in that time, then they have horns. In other words, what I mean is that these horns did not exist for the first 7 heads of the beast. They did not exist because they had received no power as yet. So you had head 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the 10 horns didn't exist yet. In pictures, we often see the 10 horns scattered over the heads of the beast, like 2 on one head, 1 on one head, or all of them on one head. But basically, when you look at this, what the prophecy says, those 10 horns do not exist on the heads. It's after the 7 heads are gone that the 10 horns emerge and they receive power 1 hour with the beast as king number 8. So there are horns that exist on the beast, but not on the heads of the beast. So this is why they are represented in Revelation 17 as having crowns, because Revelation 17 is focusing on the beast during the time when the woman is judged, which is the last moment of time. She's judged by the 10 horns, taking her out of the way. They eat her flesh, make her naked, burn her with fire. This is what the 10 horns do. And so that is when they come into power. And so at this time, they are presented as having crowns, because at this time, they become kings for 1 hour with the beast. So what I'm saying is, there's no disagreement between chapter 13 and chapter 17 once you understand that we are looking at the same power, but from different perspectives. Revelation 17 is focusing on a particular period of time, while Revelation 13 is giving us a panorama of the entire history of the beast. Now, the question that arises is, where do we put the papacy then? Are we taking the papacy out of the picture? And why is it that in Revelation 13 and in Daniel chapter 7, You have a similar description in Daniel 7. It says that the little horn makes war against the saints. In Revelation 13, it says the same thing about this beast. It says that the little horn continues for a times and a half, or 1260 days. It says that the beast does the same thing. So isn't it clear that the beast and the little horn are the same power? That's the conclusion we always come to. But as I'm saying, if you look at chapter 13 and 17, you can't conclude that the beast is a papacy. So how do we explain this similarity between what the little horn does and what the beast does? Because in Daniel 7, it's clear that this little horn is a papacy, because it is a small horn on the head of this great beast. So it represents the Roman Catholic power working within the beast. The symbol in Daniel is different from the symbol in Revelation. So here's how I would explain it. Here's how I would explain it. I would ask the question, who is it that persecuted the saints for 1260 years? Was it the Roman Catholic Church, or was it the divided Roman Empire? Was it the secular divided Roman Empire, or was it the papacy? And if you ask me the question, I would answer it is both of them. Because the Roman Catholic Church persecuted the saints through the political powers. It was the woman riding the beast. The political powers of Europe gave their authority subjected their authority to the desires of the Roman Catholic Church. So the Roman Catholic Church wore out the saints for 1260 years. But in most cases, there were some exceptions, but in most cases, the Roman Catholic Church itself did not actually do the killings. It was the heads of Europe, it was the political powers of Europe that carried out the desires of the papacy in persecuting the saints. So in actual fact, it was both the papacy as well as political Rome that persecuted the saints for those years. And so we can say that in Daniel 7, God is focusing on the role of the papacy as the little horn. And in Revelation 13, God is focusing on the role of the beast, which is still political Rome in that persecution. The other point that I mentioned last week is that God has given us two clearly distinct symbols to represent two different things. He always represents a political power by a beast. A political power is either a beast or a horn. But when is a political power represented as a horn? It is when it is a small kingdom. When it is an empire, a kingdom enveloping other kingdoms, it is represented as a beast. So a beast really represents an empire or a major global kingdom that embraces other kingdoms, while a beast is while a horn is a smaller political power, just one nation. So God has given us those symbols, and to be consistent, we should not change those symbols to suit our convenience. God also says that a woman is a religious power. It's a church power. Now what we have done is we have, this morning Brother Howard talked about hybrid. We have hybridized some of these powers. Like we have hybridized the meaning of some of these symbols. So we say a beast represents a political power, and it also represents a religious political power. And we do it so that we can make the papacy fit. But in actual fact, a beast represents a political power, which is very clear from God's own definitions in Daniel 7. The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom. It represents a kingdom. And a woman represents a religious power. So what we do have, Revelation 17 shows us clearly, is an alliance, a prostituting alliance, an adulterous relationship between the false church and the political power. That's how God represents it. He does not lose the picture by suddenly making the church into a political entity or the political entity into a religious entity. He doesn't do this. The same thing happens in when I say we, I don't mean we, I mean our Adventist interpretation, the Adventist interpretation. It does the same thing in Revelation 12, because in Revelation 12, God tells us that the dragon is the beast. But because it is convenient, we say that the dragon is also Rome. And we say this because we know that it was through Rome that Satan persecuted the church, chased the church into the wilderness. So we say the dragon also represents um, pagan Rome. And again, this is a convenient interpretation, because we cannot change the meaning of the symbol in order to suit our interpretation. God tells you clearly that the dragon is that serpent called the devil and Satan. You can't make it into pagan Rome. Satan worked through pagan Rome. So give us a different symbol for pagan Rome. Don't make the same symbol for Satan the symbol for pagan Rome. They are two different things. You can't just make them find an identity that fits you like that. So these are the reasons why I conclude that the beast of Revelation 13 cannot represent the papacy. Now, there's one thing that I admit is a huge obstruction to this interpretation, and it's an obstruction because I have not found the answer. But it's not an obstruction in the sense that I think it makes it wrong, and that obstruction is this: it's a time period. Okay, 1260 days, 42 months, times and a half. It applies to the Roman papacy in Daniel 7. It applies to the Roman beast in Revelation 13. But it also appears in Revelation 11 as 1260 days, as a times and a half. And just to fit those time periods together is a little challenging, because in some places, I really have the belief that in some places at least, that time period has a future application. Now, I mention it, but I'm not going to deal with it this evening, because it takes a lot of examination to really explain what I'm trying to say. Sister Judy, go ahead. You have to unmute.
Thank you. That was my question last week on Jeremiah chapter 51 and 52. How it connects, and also when you get to Jeremiah 51 verse 7 with Revelation 17:4. It both talks about the golden cup, and it's talking about Babylon.
I mentioned, I think I mentioned the book by A.T. Jones, From Babylon to New Jerusalem. I don't know how many people have read that little book, but I found it very helpful to me in coming to some of my conclusions. Because in that book, A.T. Jones, he really is one of the persons who helped to open my mind to looking at things on a broader spiritual perspective, instead of the limited physical representations that we sometimes apply. And A.T. Jones is the one who pointed out to me that the great Babylon that we see in Revelation is an entity that spans the ages. So the Babylon of Revelation 17 is just the latest expression of the great Babylon that had her origins back there at the Tower of Babel. But the particular prophecy in Jeremiah, now I could bring it up. I'm just trying to give you an off the bat expression. But the prophecy in Jeremiah, as I think most of us recognize, it has a twofold application. Isaiah, Jeremiah, because a lot of what Jeremiah and Isaiah said about Babylon actually was fulfilled historically. Babylon was, in the time of Jeremiah, an entity whose cup had infected the whole earth. And when God talks about the destruction of Babylon, he says that Babylon, the beauty of kingdoms, the glory of the Chaldees, excellency, shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It shall neither be inhabited nor built up again, and so forth. And he says this in the context of Babylon having oppressed and infected the whole world, and now she's being destroyed. A great deal of what is said is almost repeated word for word in the book of Revelation. So what God is doing is showing us that Babylon, her history is repeated, but in the repetition of that history, it comes to us in a spiritual context, not a physical Babylon, not a physical oppression. It's her spiritual infecting of the world that has made her this great abomination, this desolating power. And so she is to be destroyed in very much the same pattern as how the first Babylon was destroyed, but on a far greater scale. So, all right, Sister Judy. Right. So, yes, brother. I see Madeline. I'm sure that's not your name. Brother?
Ayayi.
Oh, brother Ayayi. Right. It's your. I'm sure that's your wife's name or something like that.
Yes, you saw my wife. Okay.
Okay.
Brother David.
Yes.
Again, coming back to the beast. In Daniel, Babylon is a political power.
Yes.
But in Revelation, Babylon is not a political power, if I do understand the great Babylon. So, but we are saying that, well, when God is talking about a beast, is always a political power. But I don't know why or how it comes that Babylon represents political power, and here is representing religious power. Now, and my second question is, the second beast of Revelation 13, the second beast is the political power.
Mm-hmm.
But somewhere else, you said last time that he is the false prophet, which means again that is a political power, but at another place, it is called false prophet.
Yes.
So God is not using the same terminology every time. So it's why the explanation of the first beast is a little bit much more complicated for me to understand.
All right.
And then I sent you a message, a text message last time about the woman, Revelation 17, and John said when he saw the woman, he marveled. And the angel said, "Why did you marvel? I will show you the mystery of this woman." And my question is, does this woman have something to do with the woman of Revelation 12? Because the woman of Revelation 12 went into the wilderness, and the woman of Revelation 17 was in the wilderness when John saw her. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Those are very good questions. The first two are especially very good questions. The third one, a good question too, but the first two especially. Now, just so that I remain on target, I'm going to ask you to repeat them as I come to them, right? But I'll answer the first one. Second one you remind me of. Now, the first question is pertaining to how can there be a symbol? How come the Babylon in the book of Daniel is a beast, but the Babylon of Revelation is a woman. Is this not a contradiction? All right. So the Babylon of Daniel is not the same Babylon of Revelation. Okay. In the book of Daniel, Babylon as presented there is a power that lasted for a couple of 100 years. And it is clearly a political power that politically oppresses the nations around. Babylon, if it's represented in any religious way in the Old Testament, it is simply incidental. The religion of Babylon is not the focus of the Old Testament. In other words, we don't see the Bible saying that Babylon enforces its religion or pushes its religion upon Israel or anybody else. What Babylon does is make war against the other nations and conquers Judah and carries them away as captives of war into Babylon. So Babylon in the Old Testament is a political power, therefore represented as a beast. When we come to the New Testament, the emphasis changes. God's people are no longer regarded as a political agency. They are now a spiritual entity, and everything from the time we go to the New Testament, everything pertaining to God's people is spiritual. And so the great enemy of Israel, Babylon, also becomes a spiritual entity. It's no longer a political agency. Just as Israel is now spiritual, her spiritual enemy, Babylon, must now be regarded as also a spiritual entity. And as spiritual, I mean religious powers, not any more political powers. Israel of the Old Testament was political. Now, within the context of modern Israel being spiritual and modern Babylon being spiritual, you have some political powers that are going to impact on both Babylon and modern Israel, modern Babylon and modern Israel. And these political powers are still consistently represented as beasts. But because Israel is now spiritual and Babylon is now spiritual, you can't represent them that way, because if you represented modern Babylon as a beast, you would go back to saying modern Babylon is also another political agency. So that is how I would respond to the first question. The second one, please remind me.
Okay, the second one is about the second beast of Revelation 13, and is called also the false prophet.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Right. That's a very good question, because if it's a political power, it's a beast. Why does God give it a religious label? And I would point out that the label as a false prophet has simply to do with the mission of this beast. Now, normally, who is a prophet? A prophet is a mouthpiece of a divinity. A prophet is somebody who speaks on behalf of God. And superficially, it seems like if this is a false prophet, he must claim to speak on behalf of God. But if we look at the text carefully, if we look at what it says about this false prophet in Revelation 19 and also in Revelation 13, and in fact, you know what I will do? Let me share my screen and actually look at it so we can for some strange reason this thing is not allowing me to share my screen either, just like it was doing it Brother Howard this morning. It seems to have taken, seems to be attacking me in the same way now. Let me see. Why isn't it allowing me? Okay, let me try something else. Maybe that's it. All right, yes, okay. I realize what is happening. If I minimize the Bible, it won't come up. All right, let's look at Revelation 13 first. All right, look at what it says of this beast. Verse 13. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. What is his mission? Saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by the sword, and did live. So the mission of this second beast is to bring honor to the first beast. His mission is to is to inveigle the world, to persuade the world to worship the first beast. If you go to Revelation 19, you see where that is highlighted as his job. Look at Revelation 19, come down to the end, it says, and the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worship his image. All right, so the point I'm making is this. The miracle working power of this second beast. Or let me pause on that. I'm going to come back to the miracle working power. But the mission of the second beast is to persuade everybody to glorify and honor and to worship the first beast. So what does this mean, really? It means that the work of a prophet is to go before the face of another person. It's a prophet in the sense, not in the prophet that it is a religious entity. It's not called a prophet in that sense. It's not because it's a religious entity. It's because it is a forerunner of the other beast. Well, maybe not forerunner. It's because it is the representative of the second beast, calling worship to the second beast, bringing attention to the second beast. It's an agent of the first beast. Therefore, it is called a prophet of the first beast. I hope my point is getting across. In other words, when we hear about a prophet, we think of religion, we think of worship, we think of serving a deity. But in the context of Revelation 13 and 19, this false prophet is more like John the Baptist. He goes before the face of the first beast to persuade everybody to worship the first beast. So he's the prophet of the first beast in this sense. Now let me make another comment that might seem outrageous. All right? It might seem outrageous, but we're talking about the book of Revelation, and in the book of Revelation, nothing is the way it seems. All right? And I know that a lot of the time people use this and they come up with really outrageous conclusions. And this one might seem outrageous too, but here's my thought. When it says that the second beast does miracles and makes fire come down from heaven, Revelation is a book of symbols and figures. To believe that this second beast literally brings down fire from heaven and literally works miracles is to literalize Revelation when everything in Revelation appears to be symbolic. So my thought is, are we to take these as literal miracles, or are we to apply them in the same way we have been applying the book? So what would miracles be in this sense? If we are talking about a political power, what would we consider miracles? Miracles would be events of such a magnitude and so extraordinary that they compel the whole world to pay attention.
9/11.
Brother Howard says 9/11. There are certain events which have happened, which have been of such a magnitude, events that have happened in America or are promoted by America, which have convinced the entire world to take a certain direction. And that direction has been more and more leaning towards the policies of the beast. So this is a suggestion that I would like us to think about, because if we are there waiting for a man to come along to call down fire from heaven, we might be waiting a very long time, because, as I say, Revelation is a book of symbols, and we are wise to approach it first of all from that perspective. And if we do this, then everything begins to fit in place, because we can see where America as a political power has been promoting certain policies that pertain to Rome. And I mean not just papal Rome, but political Rome. Many of the things that were present in the beast powers of the past are now being implemented by America. America is creating an image. It's not politically expedient for me to say it, but it's the truth. America is creating an image that is gradually becoming more and more like the persecuting powers of the past. that is more and more gradually taking away from people the freedoms that were established in America. America was built as a nation where the freedoms that were taken away in Europe were reestablished. That is the foundation of America. And little by little, events have happened in America, events that have been of global significance. They have amazed the world, these events. And what has been the result of these events? What has been the consequence? America has used them to gradually shape a society and a political system that is more and more becoming like an image of what the beast used to be. The beast is not the main power now. It's the false prophet bringing this upon the world, the same system that used to exist under the beast. So this is how I am understanding that particular prophecy, brother Ayai.
Brother D.
Yes, brother Frederick.
All right. With respect to the
There's
the
another question from Aya. Just remember the last question that he has.
oh, it well, I'm just trying to add some flavor to the lamb like beast.
Okay, yes.
So it's
And then
on
I'll
that.
come to brother Aya's third question. Yes, go ahead, brother Frederick.
With respect to it being a false prophet. Remember, the Bible says that it looks like a lamb, which is Christ-like, but it speaks like a dragon, which is satanic. That is like saying that it is a dragon in sheep's clothing.
Yes.
That makes it a false prophet in every sense of the word.
Right, right. If you give it you're right, those elements certainly. And yet it makes it a false prophet without really making it a biblical prophet in the sense of it being an agent of a divine power, So yes, thanks for that additional thought. And then the third question, brother Aya, please remind me.
The third question is about the woman, Revelation 17. I've been thinking about that for a while now.
Okay. Yes, I remember.
17 and Revelation 12. We
Yes.
saw the woman fled into the wilderness, and the dragon went after the posterity of the woman, and then Revelation 17, the Babylon was in the wilderness. So, and I'm saying, is the woman from Revelation 12 that came, that woman, or what is? Because he said that I wondered, I marveled when I saw.
All right, it's very tempting to come to that conclusion. All right, the first person that presented this to me was my brother. All right, my brother. He's not in this chat. He's somewhere else having another study at the moment. But he's the first person who presented that idea to me, and it's very tempting to think this way, because in Revelation 12 it says the woman fled into the wilderness, and then we don't see the woman again. Instead, we see the remnant of her seed. But in Revelation 17, we find a woman here sitting on a beast, also in the wilderness. So it seems logical to come to that conclusion that it's the same woman. But here is why I have reservations. Okay, I don't throw that idea out, but here are my reservations. First of all, the woman that we see in Revelation 17, she did not begin in Revelation 12. She began back at Babylon. The woman we see in Revelation 12 is God's church. And we could say, well, didn't it become corrupted into the Roman Catholic Church? But then that would make the woman have her beginning during the Dark Ages. Whereas the woman we see in Revelation 17, she has been sitting on the 7 heads of the beast. So she has been there from long before. The second reason is that I especially in the book of Revelation, I don't like to focus on what should I say, human institutions. And let me explain what I mean. The Adventist Church, like the Jehovah's Witnesses, like a lot of other churches, They like to identify themselves in the prophecy. Like the Adventist Church says they are there in Revelation 12, verse 17. The remnant of the seed that keep the commandments of God. And in other words, they are labeling, they are saying that the prophecy is applying to a denomination. They're trying to use human parameters to encompass this divine identity. And I reject that absolutely, totally out of hand, and I think everybody here does. Revelation is not identifying a denomination, a humanly encompassed entity. It's a spiritual people whose identity only God can clearly define. It's a spiritual people. They don't belong to any one denomination. So if we say that the woman in Revelation 17 is the same one in chapter 12, we would say, what happened in chapter 12? In chapter 12, the church morphed into the Roman Catholic Church. Did that really happen? No. An organization became the Roman Catholic Church. But the true church never became the Roman Catholic Church. So if in Revelation 12, we're actually looking at a spiritual entity, the woman is a spiritual entity, and that entity is God's church, it could never become the Roman Catholic Church because God's spiritual church never changes. So I wouldn't want to switch the identity and say, here it is a spiritual entity, but now suddenly it becomes a denominational entity, and we find it in Revelation 17. So those are the reasons why I would have some reservations about that interpretation. All right. So I don't know if we should move to the 144,000 at this point.
I
All
do
right.
have a question, brother.
Yes, Sister Diane, go ahead.
And the thing of it is, I'm not really sure. I've got it. I think I understand very clearly the understanding the beast of Revelation 13, Revelation 17, and 19. I see it's the identity there, very clear that it's the same beast. But what I have a problem with is describing the rest of the verse, of from 3 to 10. Those verses, I have a problem identifying who this beast is doing this, because it sounds like the woman.
In
That's
chapter
the
13?
experience of the woman in Revelation 13.
Okay.
It sounds, and maybe it's because of my programming, but I just can't figure out how to understand those verses applying to this beast. Who is this beast that's having these exact characteristics of this woman?
All right. So let's look at it here a little more closely. I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Upon his horns 10 crowns, upon his head the name of blasphemy. Now, some translations of the Bible put it in a way that I kind of prefer, because let's see what the NASB says. It says, and the dragon stood upon the sand of the seashore. And that's kind of consistent with most translations. Some of them say, I stood upon the sand of the sea. But if you look at what happens in the previous chapter, it says the dragon goes to make war with the woman, with the remnant of her seed. And then the next verse says, and he stood upon the sand of the sea. Okay, that's what we get in several translations. The dragon, NIV says the dragon, NASB says the dragon. And actually, the NET actually puts that at the end of chapter 12. And he stood upon the sand of the sea. If you look at chapter 12 and the last verse, it says, the rest of our seed, which keep God's commandments and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And the dragon stood upon the sand of the seashore. So the idea we are getting here is that when Satan goes to persecute the woman, he stands on the seashore, and when he stands there, something happens. A beast comes up out of the sea. And what it is suggesting is that it's like Satan is a father of this beast. He calls this beast out of the sea. He's about to persecute the woman, and so he goes and stands on the seashore, and he calls this beast out of the sea. Now, the beast, as we see, has 7 heads, 10 horns, and this is striking because Satan in Revelation 12 is represented as also having 7 heads and 10 horns. And this suggests to us that this beast represents Satan's baby, or Satan's representative, if I may put it that way. So whatever the 7 heads represent, they are expressed through this beast. Whatever the 10 horns represent, they are expressed through this beast. So let me just mute everybody here. Somebody is kind of clicking about a bit there. Right. So in other words, you never see Satan. What you see is a beast. The beast is Satan's expression of himself in this world. And so this beast is what Satan is going to use to persecute the remnant of the seed. So God takes us there and shows us, where does the beast come from? It comes from the sea. It comes from a populated area. Now later on, the beast is going to disappear, and he seems to be gone. And when he comes back, he comes from the bottomless pit. But in his incarnation, in his origins, the beast comes from the sea. So we see that he has the characteristics of Satan. He's Satan's representative. 7 heads, 10 horns. Upon his head is the name of blasphemy. The beast I saw was like a leopard, his feet as a bear, his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Yes, we would limit this to the papacy, but I don't understand it this way. He gives him this power from the beginning of the beast. The greatest power and authority on this earth has been that agency, that power, that kingdom that Satan has used. 1 head, then the next head, then the next head, then the next head. It has been Satan's representative on this earth. All right. So far we don't have any contradiction. What we do have is that he looks like a leopard, feet of a bear, mouth of a lion, which means that God is saying to us, these kingdoms that you recognize from the past, they are a part of this beast. This beast encompasses those previous kingdoms that I mentioned. So this helps us to see that the beast is a panorama. He covers ages. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death. Now, what is one of his heads? One of his heads is one of those kingdoms, one of those empires. One of those empires seems to disappear. And his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. As Sister Diane says, our minds naturally gravitate to what happened to the Pope. The Pope was taken captive in 1798, and he had his temporal power restored in 1929 through Mussolini, and the Italian conquered that. Okay, so that is something we have learned, and our minds automatically default to that interpretation. But if we look at the bigger picture and say that these heads represent these 7 great empires, when you look at those 7 empires, do you see any of them that appear to disappear and then come back? It never happened to Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo Persia, or Greece. But what about Rome? Did Rome disappear and appear to come back? And yet at the same time, you know that when it comes back, if it comes back, it will come back in a different form. Because when you compare the prophecies, we are told that there will be in the last days the strength of iron, but the weakness of clay. You have Rome, but it does not come back in the same form. It kind of resurrects, but it doesn't come back in the same form. So the head that was wounded and that seems to come back is Rome. Europe has always been the center of this beast. It has always been the seat of this beast's power. Europe and the old world, right? North Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. But that is where that beast is from. And Rome, as most of us know, the European psyche has always been the thinking of empire. Always in Europe, there is the idea of empire. And as I pointed out, through the European Union, the heads of Europe are trying to recreate another empire, this time by political means instead of through war. Every other empire has arisen through war, but the present attempt to rebuild the Roman Empire is the European Union, and they're trying to do it by political means. And what we see is a tenuous alliance, because God says they shall mingle themselves with the seeds of men, but they shall not cleave one to another. So we have a tenuous alliance. We have a European Union that is governed by a European Parliament operating out of Belgium. It's a United States of Europe. It's one political power, but it's not holding together very well. It's not quite the same as the United States of America. It's interesting that you have two United States in the world. You have the United States of America and you have the United States of Europe. I don't know of any other entities like these two powers. There are two, they are in a sense two empires, the two great empires of the world today, America and Europe. And Europe is really, they rebuilt Roman Empire in disguised form. So like it says in Revelation 17, the beast that you saw was and is not and yet is. It is not and it yet is, because it appears that the empire no longer exists, and yet it exists in a form. So the deadly wound, I understand to be the dissolution of the Roman Empire back in 470 something, when Rome was broken apart. And different powers, different entities have tried to rebuild that empire over the ages, from Napoleon, Charles the Hammer, Hitler, Kaiser Wilhelm. Different people tried to rebuild that Roman Empire, and they have never succeeded. But there's a kind of tenuous alliance at the moment that appears to be a coming back together of the Roman Empire. So it is Rome, and yet it is not Rome. So it fulfills the specification of the prophecy. It is not, and yet is. So I understand this to be the healing of the deadly wound, to be the European Union, which the Bible says will last for a short space. Head number 7 is to last for a short space. And it is also head number 6, but not number 6. It's the same, but it's not the same. So it kind of gives some meaning to that prophecy, which is so difficult to understand. Now, in verse 4, it says, they worship the dragon and they worship the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him? We apply these things to the papacy, but if you understand that in Revelation, worshiping the beast does not mean you bow down and worship. Because it says, and they worshipped the dragon. Nobody except the church of Satan worships Satan. And yet it says that the world will worship the dragon. So what it is saying to us is that this worship is not worship as we understand worship. It's worship in the sense that they give their loyalty to the beast. They give their loyalty to the beast. And by giving their loyalty and their support to the beast, they're actually giving their loyalty and support to Satan, because Satan is the governing power behind the beast. So it says in verse 5, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 40 and 2 months. Now, when it says power was given unto him to continue 40 and 2 months, we must understand it is power to continue in persecuting God's people. Now, this is where I am really at a toss-up, because I'm kind of challenged in asking the question, is this 42 months referring to what happened in the past? Or is it something that will happen in the future? And the reason why I ask the question is because remember what we are told. We are told that the dragon goes to make war against the remnant. And it is in this context that we see the beast. God shows us the beast, and he says the beast will do these things. So are we looking at the persecution of the remnant in the future? Or are we looking at the historical persecution of saints in the past? In the context of the chapter, it seems to me that it is focusing on a future persecution. But this is just a suggestion that I am not trying to set in stone. It's just an idea that comes to my mind. In any case, the ability of this power to persecute God's people in the context of the final persecution, he's limited. He continues for a certain time. Now, one of the words that make people think that this definitely is the papacy is the word blasphemy. All right? There's given to him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. He opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. We have applied this to say the Pope is the one we are talking about, because the Pope is called Lord God the Pope. The Pope is said to be able to forgive sins. The Pope is said to be the vicar of Christ. And so we apply these things, and then we go to a couple of statements in the Gospels. We go to where they accuse Jesus of blasphemy because he, being a man, They say he being a man claims to be God. And so we say that's blasphemy. And so the Pope is the one who blasphemed because he claims to be God. However, here's something to consider. Revelation is written in the language of the Old Covenant. If we want to understand what blasphemy against God is, it's not wise to go to the New Testament and look for the definition. How was blasphemy understood in the Old Testament? And we find that there is a somewhat different emphasis if you go to the Old Testament. In fact, the word only comes up once in the Old Testament, and it comes up in the time of Hezekiah. In the time of Hezekiah, there was a certain king, and it was actually the king of Babylon, I believe, or Assyria. It was Assyria. And he sent a message to Hezekiah telling what he was going to do, how he was going to what he was going to do. He was going to take away his wives and take over his palace and devastate the people unless Hezekiah paid him a certain amount of money, something like this. And Hezekiah sent to the prophet Isaiah. Let's read it in 2 Kings 19. And he sent Eliakim, which was over the household, and Shebna the scribe, and the elders of the priests, covered with sackcloth, to Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos. And they said unto him, Thus said Hezekiah, this day is a day of trouble and of rebuke and blasphemy. For the children are come to the birth, and there is not strength to bring forth. The only time that the word blasphemy is used in the Bible is when a heathen power comes against God's people and declares that they cannot do anything to resist him. He makes demands of God's people and says, if you don't do this, this is what I will do. And you nor your God can do nothing to stop it. That is the Old Testament understanding of blasphemy. So if I'm looking for the meaning of blasphemy in the book of Revelation, I think I would go here and look for it. And I suggested something to you last week that I'm going to repeat. If you want to see something really blasphemous and really strange, look at what is happening in the European Union. The European Parliament building is designed to look like the unfinished Tower of Babel. Now, you ask yourself the question, why would any rational being who has any respect for God set up as the center of his government something that looks like the unfinished Tower of Babel? You know what happened at the Tower of Babel? God said, what these people are doing is displeasing to me. I will destroy it. He confounded their language because they were doing something that was displeasing to him. The European Parliament has built a building designed to look like the thing that God specifically says was an offense to him. And in fact, when they were establishing the European Union, they were preparing logos, and one of the logos was a picture of the Tower of Babel being built. And you know what was written underneath it? Many languages, one people. That's one of the logos of the European Union. Many languages, one people. God says the people were of one language, and he scattered them and gave them many languages. The European Union comes and says many languages, one people. It's open, bare-faced defiance of what the Bible says. Couple that with the fact that the most atheistic continent on the planet is the continent of Europe. God is being driven out of Europe systematically. The churches are being closed down. They are being turned into dance halls and museums. God is systematically being driven out of Europe. And as I said to you, those of you who haven't done it, you can look for the opening of the Switzerland tunnel if you want to see real raw paganism in which most of the heads and the political powers of Europe were involved. Just look at it, and if you can make sense of it, next week you come and explain it to me. But when you look at it, it is nothing but pure, raw, pagan worship, worship of pagan gods, worship of pagan entities. Europe when you look at it, you're frightened. Because if you think the Pope has blasphemed by his little statements, look at what is happening in Europe in general, and you will be startled. So I'm more inclined to go with the idea that this blasphemy against God, his name and his tabernacle applies to Europe in a greater sense. Verse 7.
David, I want to say this. In the terms of this word, blasphemy, when we see at the beginning of the text, it is on the beast in the first place. It's on the beast in verse 17 too. So that was something that was interesting. When you see the word was not to the woman, the word blasphemy was applied to the beast. And that's you got to get your eyes right to make that connection, because it took me a while, but I get that.
Thank you, because I intended to mention that and I forgot. So thank you for bringing it up, Diane. So let's go to Revelation 17 and just look at what she just said, because this is something I was confused. I never recognized it either for a long, long time. I always said that the woman has the name of blasphemy. And I don't remember if somebody pointed it out to me. I was reading and I saw it, and I was startled because I searched and I could not find blasphemy on the name of the woman. It says in verse 3, Revelation 17, so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So it says the beast has the names, and then if you go now and search to see where it says the woman has the name of blasphemy. Go and search, and you will be searching a long time. It's not there. So again, that's another indication that the beast, when we apply this blasphemy to the Pope, we are really off base, because it's not the woman, it's the beast that has the name of blasphemy.
I wanted to say this, Brother David, when you were saying about this beast coming back in a different form, Rome disappeared. But remember, in the statue of Daniel, it was the legs of iron, which was strong. And when we came back in this different form, it was only iron and clay, so it's weak now. It's
exactly.
Not like it was the first time.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's amazing, because the prophecy is so difficult to make sense of, because it says it was and is not yet is. How does that make sense? And it confused me for a long, long time. But I think that this explanation is the only thing that can fit those elements together. Well, I won't, maybe there's something else, but it's the only thing I have seen that can make those elements fit together in an intelligible way. So it says in verse 8, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Now I'm going to compare chapter 13 with chapter 17 just for a moment, because I want to just reinforce the fact that this beast is the same beast of chapter 17. So let's go to chapter 17 over here on the right hand side, and we'll go to chapter 13 over here on the left hand side. All right, now in verse 8, both chapters give us verse 8, and it's interesting because they say basically the same thing. We looked at this before, but it's always good to revise and remind ourselves. It says, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. So this is the beast of chapter 13. The beast of chapter 17, which clearly is the one that the woman is riding. We say it's the same beast. Some people say it's a different beast, but look what it says about this beast. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and is about to come up out of the abyss and go to destruction. Let me use the King James Version for consistency. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition. And they that dwell upon the earth shall wander Here it says, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. It also says a little further up, and all the world wondered after the beast. So it's saying the same thing, just in different verses. But it says, they that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. It says, all they that dwell on the earth shall wonder. Whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world? Whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world? And I repeat that this is a mistranslation in the King James Version. If you look at it in the NASB, for example, it says, whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who has been slain. It's the same phrase. Same phrase. It's saying the same thing. And why does God do this? Because he's showing us again that the experience of the beast in chapter 13, how people respond to it, is the same thing being said in chapter 17. It's the same beast. It's the same event. It's the same history. It's just that chapter 17, we are zeroing in on two things. Number one, the relationship of the woman with the beast. And number two, the time of the judgment. That's why some of the elements are a little different in chapter 17, but it really is the same history of the same beast. It's not two different beasts. So if we continue reading in chapter 13, it says, if anyone has an ear, let him hear. Now, the King James Version says, he that leadeth into captivity must go into captivity. Let me actually read what it says so I don't misquote it. But in Revelation 13, I'll put it on the right-hand column here. It says, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. And Adventists have interpreted that to mean that the Pope is going to be taken captive, because he has been killing with a sword and he's going to be killed with a sword. He is taken into captivity. He's taking people captive. He'll be taken into captivity. But I really believe that the interpretation you find in most other translations is a better interpretation, because here's what it says. If anyone is destined for captivity, he will go into captivity. If anyone is to be killed with the sword, he will be killed with the sword. Let me see if I can find a more appropriate translation. Yeah, I don't generally like the NIV, but sometimes I do go there because it's good to compare what the ideas and see which one makes more sense. It says, if anyone is to go into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will be killed. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. So now the whole verse makes sense. When it says, here is the patience and faith of the saints in the King James Version, it says, all right, the Pope is going into captivity and he's going to be killed with a sword. Actually, he wasn't killed with a sword. Here is the patience and faith of the saints. You need to be patient and you need to be faithful, because the Pope is going to be taken captive. It doesn't make as much sense. The idea in the NIV really makes sense, because it says this beast is going to be persecuting God's people. The whole world is going to wander after the beast and they are going to be amazed at this beast. And so God's people, take care, because those of you who are going to go into prison, you are going to end up there. And those of you who are going to be killed with a sword, you are going to be killed with a sword. This requires patient endurance and faithfulness on your part. That makes sense. God tells us what is coming and he says, be patient and endure unto the end. So this is how I would explain these verses, Sister Diane. I know that from the point of view of how we have always been taught, they almost want to compel us to think a certain way. But you know, I'm saying once you begin to think along another line, you can see that it makes perfect sense and even better sense to look at it from another perspective. Some of the discrepancies there are removed when you look at it from the other perspective.
Yes, I thank you. I like looking at these different translations. It always helps me. I know this is not a translation NLT, but I still like it because it's really clear. It says, anyone who with ears to hear should listen and understand. Anyone who is destined for prison will be taken to prison. Anyone destined to die by the sword will die by the sword. Like these are saying, this means that God's holy people must endure persecution patiently and remain faithful.
Amen. Amen. And from this perspective, it makes perfect sense because a little further down it says that those who do not worship the beast, nor his image, nor receive his mark or the number of his name, there will be a death decree. It will be commanded that they should die. They should be killed. And as a matter of fact, I think it actually says, does it say kill with a sword? Not with a sword, but it says should be killed. And he should cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So definitely, this is calling for endurance on the part of God's people. And so anyway, I appreciate the questions because they really help to flesh out some of the ideas and to fill in some of the blanks. Now, I did promise Sister Maria that we would actually take a look at the 144,000, but I'm tempted to say she must be tired and everybody else must be a little tired here now. I don't know if it's because to really examine the issue properly will take at least half the time, or maybe as much time as we have already been on the study this evening. I remember one time I did this study on the 144,000, and one of my dear friends, she came in at the end and she said, nonsense, that cannot be correct. So, and she was one of my very good friends and a very good supporter too. So I realized that it can have this effect if you don't explain what you're saying thoroughly. So if we have the endurance to go through another hour, then I would start. But I don't think that would be wise because everybody may be a little tired and worn out, and your faculties are not as sharp. So, Sister Maria, if you're hearing,
Yes, Brother David. Yeah, we can do some other time too if it's
yeah, I know that
that's
I know that I promised Brother Frederick that he would be able to do a presentation one evening, and I promised you that we would look at the 144,000, and the promises are piling up. So I don't want to keep putting up. But next week, what we will do is I won't ask any questions. I'll go straight into it. If you can remind me about this so that we get it out of the way before we take any questions. All right?
yeah, okay. I know that you have a presentation in your channel about the 144,000. I went and looked at it some times ago, but my last night my question is actually between the remnant. My question is the remnant people and the 144,000 are the same people? That's actually my question.
Oh, okay. So it's okay. So okay, you're familiar with the video, so we don't really need a full study on it. And
Yes.
I think I did promise Brother Frederick that next week would be his presentation. My wife is just reminding me. So anyway, so are the 144,000 the remnant? My understanding is that the remnant will the 144,000 will come from the remnant, because I am persuaded that the 144,000 are the Christians who do not die. They pass through the great tribulation, and God brings them to a place where they represent him in the world in a very special way. They don't die, but they also represent God in an extraordinary way. Not because of their abilities, but because of what God is doing through them. But when Satan goes to make war against the remnant, this 144,000 number is not finalized. There are Christians among them who are going to die. because Satan is making war. And as we just read, it says, if anyone is to be killed with the sword he must be killed. If anyone is to go to prison, taken captive, to captivity he shall go. So there will be martyrs, because some will give their lives. In fact, the Bible talks about being beheaded. Whether we take that literally or not, I probably wouldn't take it literally, but at the same time, it talks about dying, giving our lives, being persecuted at this time. So I fully believe that what is coming is so horrific that we don't understand, and people are going to be put to death because of the way we worship God. Something is coming on this planet that is going to scare the people of the world so badly. It's going to scare them and make them so. I mean, if you think COVID got the world on edge, some of the stupid things people did, right? They beat a man on a bus in Jamaica because he coughed, right? Beat him and threw him off the bus, right? They scare the people to death that they are so frightened. There's another man who was on a bus yesterday. He died on the bus, right? But he died of asthma. And when he started to gasp, people jumped through the window of the bus. They emptied the bus. Nobody helped him because they were scared that he was dying of COVID. That is what they have done to the people. They have scared them beyond reason. They have become mindless. So and this for something. I mean, people may not agree with me, but you're going to see that eventually this just dies away like the ordinary flu. You may not agree with me. Watch and see. What they have done is they have learned how to scare intelligence out of people. And whatever is coming is going to do far worse for the people of this world. They are going to learn to hate people who stand for true Christianity. They are going to learn to believe that we are a threat to their security and safety. And so Christians are going to die. And out of this, there will be those who represent God as he has never been represented on this world before. And that will be the 144,000. They will not die, and they'll be God's. They'll be like God says, here is my expression of what the gospel can really do. God does not turn them into the 144,000 to save them, because if I die, I will still be saved. If I die, if I die like the thief on the cross, I will still be saved. It's not about salvation. I used to believe you need to be perfect to as the 144,000 to be saved. No, you need to be in Christ. But why are the 144,000 brought to such a level of immaculate character? It's because God is putting them on display before the world. He has a demonstration to make to the world, and they are the chosen vessel that he will use. So these are the ones who won't die. So the short answer, Sister Maria, is that the remnant includes the 144,000, but they are more than the 144,000. That's my understanding. The remnant of the seed is the last remaining portion of the body of Christ, because Christ is the seed. And the remnant of the seed is the remaining part of the body of Jesus, because the head is in heaven, that the body is on earth. And the body is kind of malnourished. It's a big head and a little body. But the Bible says that he has given gifts to the church that it may grow up to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. So the remnant is a remaining part of the body, and that body is going to be still further purified, because some will die. But the last little part will grow up to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. And so that demonstration of Christ will be here again the second time. Yes, Sister Diane, you.
What about David, the great multitude
The Son of God. That's
Hold on a second, Brother Raymond. Go ahead. Go again, Sister Diane.
I'm sorry. The text in Ephesians says, in the full measure of the Son of God. It specifically says the Son of God, just not Christ. So I think that's significant, in the Son of God.
Amen. So Brother Raymond's question is, what about the great multitude? All right.
What about the great multitude that follow him? Because My my understanding is that according to the revelation of John, he sees from the 12 tribes, right? It's 144,000 gathered from this nation, from the 12 tribes. That means Israel. But then a great multitude follows them because John asked them, and who are these? That are following, that are dressing, that are dressed in white robes. He said these are the ones that have passed a great tribulation. So that great multitude, in my understanding, is it is the same as when they were freed from Egypt and they went through the time of trouble as well. Is my understanding, from what I see.
Okay. Yeah, brother Raymond is opening up a can of worms. By this I mean that he's dragging it into a long study, because I couldn't explain the great multitude without actually going through the prophecy in detail, because the conclusions, as far as the great multitude is concerned, is very unexpected. I would say that the conclusion from my point of view is very unexpected. So I don't want to touch the great multitude until I'm
Yeah,
actually doing a
another time.
comprehensive.
Yeah, you for another time. Yeah, all right.
All right,
Yeah.
Brother Raymond, I'll do that.
Or just
All right.
go ahead and make a reference to the YouTube video that deals with it.
Right. To be perfectly honest, I don't even remember the title. I think in the webinars there is a webinar by the name of the 144,000. But there is also a study that is not a webinar. I'd have to look for it, but I know that there is a study entitled the 144,000 in the webinars. So I'll try to find it and post it in the chats, right? I'll post it in the notification group so that if anybody wants to look at it, you can find it. All right. Now, if there's any other question, I'll take it as the last question, because I think we've been an hour and a half and it's long enough to wear out the saints.
David, thank you for that explanation. It's beautiful. I have a more clear understanding now that you said it. Thank you.
You're welcome, Sister Maria. All right. God bless you then. And thank you, guys. And you all have a blessed evening, morning, or whatever it is, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us this evening again. It has been a blessing and a pleasure worshiping with all of you. And I'll see you all again next Thursday for those who can join, Friday night for those who can join. We may get on one evening this week, maybe on a Tuesday evening, just for a little prayer meeting. But if that is in the pipeline, I will put up a quick notice in the morning so you all can know where and when. It will be here, but I might put up a notice if that is to be. So I'll let you know. Sister Diane, could you pray to dismiss us?
Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this beautiful Sabbath day and this our ability to gather and worship you. We praise you, Father, because you are alone worthy of our praise. We thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your mercy. I pray blessings and health among all the brethren that are here, among their families. We just love you because you are our God and we worship you. We thank you for this ability to come together as we've never been able to meet together before with brothers, sisters from around the world. So we can praise you in this situation, and we just ask that you continue to be with Brother David, his family, Brother Howard, his family, and all the brethren that are leading out different places in different parts of the world in their ministries. We pray your protection for them and their families, and we just want to love you and thank you for all that you've done. And we ask you to be with us until we meet again. Let us remain faithful and true. In Jesus' name I pray and thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Brother David.